My husband found out about my emotional affair, but he was hiding a darker secret. When I walked away, he tried to destroy me. Until I exposed everything. I know what you did. That's all the note said. Black Sharpie, slanted handwriting, sharp and angry like it had been written mid-heartbeat. The kind of sentence that doesn't need punctuation because the intent is already violent. It was tucked neatly under the wiper blade of my SUV, my silver Honda Pilot, the same car I drove to school every day, the same car I'd picked up from the dealership 3 years ago when Trevor surprised me with a just because gift. I'd thought he was being sweet. Now I couldn't stop thinking about the timing. Or how hollow that day had felt even then. But the note wasn't the worst part. Not even close. What really stole the air from my lungs was the glass. My windshield, cracked down the center like someone had taken a hammer to it with precision. Not random vandalism, intentional. Controlled. Centered. A bullseye. And suddenly, my entire body lit up with questions. Who knew? How long had they known? And what, exactly, did they think I'd done? It was a cold morning. Not bitter, but biting. One of those November days where your breath ghosts in front of you. The sun was just beginning to spill weakly across the rooftops in our suburban utopia of Rosebrook Hills. Sprinklers ticking. Dogs barking. Early joggers jogging like nothing had just shifted in my world. I clutched the note tighter and looked around. Nothing. No movement from the surrounding homes. No neighbors peeking through curtains. No mysterious figures fleeing the scene. Just me, my cracked windshield, and a message that felt less like an accusation and more like a promise. I didn't go to work that day. I told the school I had food poisoning. It wasn't a complete lie. My stomach had twisted into something unrecognizable, and the acid wouldn't quit bubbling up the back of my throat. I sat in the kitchen, still in my coat, the note spread out on the table like a tiny bomb that had already gone off. I know what you did. But what had I done? That's the question that kept circling. I hadn't cheated. Not really. I hadn't lied. Not entirely. I hadn't even broken any laws. But I had crossed lines. Not with Trevor, though God knows our marriage had been slowly disintegrating like a paper towel in rain, but with someone else. Someone I should never have spoken to twice, let alone invited in. Max was 25. My mechanic. I met him 6 months ago when my check engine light came on. He had soft eyes, a scar across one eyebrow, and a voice that made everything sound like a confession. He asked questions nobody else bothered with. Remembered my dog's name. Noticed when I changed my hair, not just noticed, but complimented it without hesitation or calculation. And maybe that's what broke me. Because Trevor hadn't really looked at me, in over a year. Not since his real estate firm landed that contract downtown and suddenly every evening became client dinners and every weekend was emergency site visits. I was alone more often than not. And when he was home, it was like living with a polite ghost. Someone who remembered your birthday, but not your favorite song. Max wasn't an affair. He was a possibility. We had lunch once. I didn't tell anyone. I told myself it was harmless. That I was allowed to have a conversation with someone who saw me. But it wasn't harmless. It was addictive. One lunch turned into weekly coffee. Then late-night texts. Then a single moment in his garage, after hours, when the radio was playing low and I was laughing too hard. His hand brushed mine. I didn't pull away. That was as far as it went. But emotionally, I'd already sprinted across the line. I walked around the house that morning like it didn't belong to me. Every photo frame looked staged. Every piece of furniture felt unfamiliar. Trevor's keys were gone, his car missing from the driveway. I called him once. He didn't pick up. Texted him a vague, "Hey, everything okay?" even though I was the one with a windshield that looked like a warning shot. No reply. I didn't even know what I expected. An apology? An admission? A fight? My phone buzzed later with a text. "Sorry, been in meetings all morning. You need something." I stared at it like it was in another language. I wanted to scream. I need you to care, I thought. I need you to see me. I need you to notice there's a grenade on our front lawn and ask if I'm the one who pulled the pin. But all I wrote back was, no, I'm good. Because that's what you do after 11 years. You get good at not saying things. By noon, I was pacing. Was it Max? Had someone seen us? Had someone followed me? Was it Mallory? That question hit harder than I expected. Mallory, my neighbor and once best friend. We used to drink wine on the porch together, late into summer nights, swapping stories about our husbands, our jobs, our boring little lives. But something shifted a few months ago. She stopped waving when I pulled into the driveway. Her texts got shorter. Her tone sharpened. Last week, she stood on her lawn talking to another neighbor, and when I walked past, she lowered her voice. I'd told myself I was imagining it. But maybe I wasn't. Maybe someone knew. Maybe everyone knew. Maybe this perfect street with its trimmed hedges and matching mailboxes had been watching me this whole time, waiting for the cracks to show. And now, the first one had shattered my windshield. At 4:23 p.m., someone rang the doorbell. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I crossed the living room slowly, heart thudding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. It was Mallory. Tight ponytail. Arms crossed. That look on her face, the one she wore when her kids tracked mud through her kitchen. Disappointment. Disgust. Something worse. She didn't say hello. You have a minute? She asked, eyes scanning the living room behind me, like she was looking for evidence. Or maybe for Trevor. Sure, I said, voice hollow. We stood on the porch like strangers. Then she handed me something. An envelope. Thick. Sealed. I thought you should see this, she said. Before he gets home. My fingers shook as I took it. Mallory turned and walked away without another word. Inside the envelope were photographs. 8 of them. Every single one showed me and Max. Coffee shop. Park bench. My car in front of his shop. The last one? That moment in the garage. His hand on mine. And us, smiling. Like two people who thought no one was watching. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat on the floor, the envelope resting in my lap like it might detonate. The photos were spread around me in a slow-motion hurricane, faces frozen in moments I barely remembered living. It wasn't just what they showed, it was how they were taken. Angled from across streets. Through restaurant windows. Zoomed from parking lots. Whoever captured them hadn't just stumbled onto us, they'd followed me. Tracked me. Waited for me to slip. And now they wanted me to know it. I picked up the final photo again. The one in Max's garage. The lighting was awful, harsh fluorescent spill, but it caught us perfectly. His hand over mine. My face tilted just slightly toward him, like I wanted to be kissed. My expression wasn't guilt. It was relief. Worse, a hope. That's the one Trevor would remember. If he hadn't seen it already. Which begged the real question. Who took these? And who are they for? The door slammed open at 6:14 p.m. I scrambled to gather the photos, shoving them back into the envelope like ashes I could hide. Leah? Trevor called out, keys jangling, his footsteps echoing louder than usual. You home? I stood, wiped my palms on my jeans. In here, I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. He walked in, phone in hand, wearing that half-smile he saved for clients. You okay? Got your text earlier. What's going on? I hesitated. Stared at him like he was a stranger. Because he was, wasn't he? Someone vandalized my car, I said. Left a note. Smashed the windshield. He blinked. Seriously? What kind of note? I stepped aside and placed the envelope gently on the counter. This kind, I said. He opened it, flipped through the photos silently. His jaw tensed, but his eyes didn't change. Not fear. Not hurt. Not even rage. Just calculation. How long? He asked flatly. I swallowed. There was nothing physical. We just. He raised a hand. I didn't ask for a breakdown. Silence stretched. I waited for him to yell. To accuse. To walk out. But he didn't. Instead, he picked up the last photo, stared at it for 3 long beats, then said something I didn't expect. "You're not the only one with secrets, Leah." That sentence hung in the air like smoke. "What does that mean?" I asked, pulse quickening. He poured himself a drink. Scotch. No ice. Took a slow sip like we were just discussing lawn maintenance. "I've known about Max for weeks," he said. "Mallory told me." That made my stomach drop. "She saw you two outside the hardware store. Said she recognized the way you looked at him. Like the way you used to look at me." I flinched. Not because it was untrue, but because I couldn't remember the last time I'd looked at Trevor with anything but exhaustion. "I hired someone to follow you," he continued. "Just to confirm." I stared. "You hired someone?" He didn't look ashamed. Didn't want to make accusations without proof. But once I had the pictures, I figured you'd either come clean or I'd wait. "Wait for what?" I asked. He finally met my eyes. Leverage. It was like the air got thinner. Like the walls leaned in a little. "What are you talking about?" I asked. Trevor reached into his briefcase and pulled out a manila folder. He laid it on the table beside the envelope, pushed it toward me. Inside were bank statements. Not ours, mine. My personal savings. My retirement account. Even a loan application I didn't remember signing. All of them with irregularities. Transfers I didn't make. A joint account I never authorized. And a new line of credit opened in both our names with a $20,000 balance. "What is this?" I whispered. "I've been shifting funds for months," he said. "Little by little. Nothing big enough to trip an alarm. But if you want to leave, if you want to start over with Mr. Oil under his nails, you're walking away with nothing." I couldn't speak. "You betrayed me emotionally," he said calmly. So I responded logically. It was in that moment I realized Trevor didn't want a divorce. He wanted a hostage. Trevor's voice was calm. Too calm. That tone he used when he thought he'd won. "I didn't want to do this, Leah," he said, sipping his drink like this was just another Tuesday. "But you forced my hand. I couldn't have you walking around thinking you had the moral high ground." The words settled like dust around the kitchen. I stood frozen, heart thudding, while he straightened his tie as if none of this, the note, the photos, the betrayal, was anything more than a chess move. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was something colder. "You opened accounts in my name," I said quietly, not even asking. Just stating. "I did," he confirmed. "Nothing illegal. You'd be surprised what a shared address and a bit of missing mail can accomplish." He smiled like it was clever. Like I should be impressed. "What's the end game here?" I asked, throat dry. "Blackmail? Do you want me to confess? Crawl back and beg?" Trevor chuckled. "No. I just want you to understand the position you're in. This marriage is an investment. You don't get to cash out because someone made you feel pretty for 5 minutes." I looked at him then, really looked. The man I married was still there. Same haircut, same sharp jawline, same tie clip he wore on our 2nd anniversary. But something behind his eyes had rotted. Or maybe it had always been rotten, and I'd just spent the last 11 years decorating it with Pinterest quotes and dinner parties. "I should have left you years ago," I said. He set his glass down. "You didn't." He was right. I hadn't. Because I was too loyal. Too tired. Too hopeful. Too trained. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, the photos and bank statements swimming in my head like pieces of a nightmare I couldn't shake. I thought about Mallory. About how easily she betrayed me. She knew I'd been slipping. Maybe she even welcomed it. Maybe watching me unravel gave her something to feel good about in her own stale life. I thought about Max. If I told him everything now, would he help? Would he stand beside me or vanish the moment it got real? But mostly, I thought about the woman I used to be. Before Trevor. Before the house. Before I stopped checking my reflection and wondering who I was looking at. What had I become? And what would it cost to undo it? By morning, I'd made my choice. I brewed coffee. Took a shower. Got dressed like it was any other day. Trevor had already left for work. He'd texted me at 6:22 a.m. Out early. Don't wait up. Of course. I walked to the safe in the closet. Combination hadn't changed. Inside was the folder I'd kept just in case. Divorce paperwork. Never filled out. But I had a flash drive there too. On it? Everything. Screenshots. Voice memos. An old backup from Trevor's laptop he'd asked me to run a year ago containing emails that showed more than financial manipulation. Deals. Shell companies. The kind of stuff he told me not to worry about when we were still sharing wine on the porch and laughing like life hadn't started curdling around the edges. I pulled it all together, stuffed it in my work tote, and headed for the front door. But just as I turned the knob, the doorbell rang. Standing there was Max, wearing a gray hoodie, hands in his pockets, eyes full of something raw. I didn't know where else to go, he said. I blinked. What's wrong? He hesitated, then pulled a letter from his coat. Folded, smudged, and very familiar. I got this in my mailbox this morning, he said. My heart dropped. The same note. I know what you did. He looked at me, eyes wide. Who did you tell? No one, I said, shaking my head. I swear, Max, I didn't tell anyone. Then how do they know my address? He asked. I felt the blood drain from my face. Trevor. Trevor didn't just know about Max, he wanted him to know that he knew. This wasn't just control. It was a message. Stay away. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed with the photos in one hand and my phone in the other. My thumb hovered over Trevor's contact. I could confront him again. I could scream, threaten, demand some kind of twisted justice. But I didn't. Instead, I opened a new browser tab and booked a hotel room downtown under a different name. Then I packed a bag with 3 changes of clothes, my passport, the flash drive, and the one photo of me at the Grand Canyon taken when I was 24, alone, and smiling like I didn't owe anyone anything. Before I left, I walked into the kitchen and pulled a notepad from the drawer. I wrote 2 sentences. You broke something that never belonged to you. And I'm not scared anymore. Then I walked out the door without looking back. The first night in the hotel was quiet. Too quiet. There's something uniquely terrifying about silence when you know someone's looking for you. It doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like the moment in a horror movie when the lights flicker, but the jump scare hasn't landed yet. The room was clean, beige, and boring in a way that almost calmed me. No wedding photos. No mail on the counter with both our names. No smells of Trevor's aftershave or his favorite roast coffee brewing before dawn. Just stillness. And the clock. Ticking. Loud. Constant. At 2:07 a.m., my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I didn't answer. 2 minutes later, a voicemail landed. I couldn't bring myself to listen. At 2:41, it rang again. This time, I picked up. I know where you are, Trevor said calmly. There was no threat in his voice. That made it worse. I don't care, I whispered. You will, he replied, then hung up. I went to the police the next morning. Filed a report about identity theft. Took every piece of evidence I had, financial statements, the envelope of photos, the flash drive, and handed it all over. The officer looked uncomfortable. He kept glancing at the door, like someone might walk in and ask why he was wasting time on something so domestic. I told him I feared for my safety. That my husband had access to my accounts, my schedule, and now knew where I was hiding. He nodded like he'd heard it all before. Maybe he had. You should talk to a lawyer, he said. That's when I realized I'd expected something more. Action. Urgency. Sirens. But no one was coming to save me. I called Max. His voice was soft, but tired. He's been to my shop, he said. Didn't say anything, just stood across the street and watched for 20 minutes. Did he know you saw him? Yeah, I think that was the point. I closed my eyes. You okay? I asked. He laughed, but there was no joy in it. That depends. Are we in this together, or am I just collateral damage in your escape story? That one hurt. I never meant for you to get dragged into this. Intentions don't erase consequences, Leah. Silence stretched. Then, softer, he added, "But yeah, I'm still here." The lawyer I found specialized in financial abuse and digital manipulation. Her name was Mara, mid-40s, no nonsense, wore sharp glasses and sharper heels. The kind of woman who could make a spreadsheet bleed. She didn't flinch at my story. "Do you have access to any joint accounts?" she asked. "Not anymore." He locked me out. "What about shared property?" "Just the house." "Whose name is on the deed?" I paused. "His." Mara scribbled something, then looked up. "Then you have two choices. Go to war or disappear." I blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means if you fight him, it gets ugly. Court, depositions, asset freezes. And if he's smart, he'll drag it out until you're out of money or willpower, whichever breaks first. And the other option? You vanish. Change your name, open new accounts, leave the mess behind." My breath caught. "I can't just run." "Why not?" she asked deadpan. And I didn't have a good answer. That night, I went back to the hotel and found the door ajar. Nothing stolen. Nothing touched. Just the door, cracked open like an invitation or a threat. I backed away slowly, heart hammering, and called the front desk from the parking lot. They reviewed the cameras. "Looks like it was propped open with a towel," the manager said. No one entered. "But someone was here," I said. "Yes, ma'am," he replied. "Looks that way." At 4 a.m., I booked a flight. One way. No luggage. Destination, Phoenix. It wasn't random. It was the place I'd always wanted to move before I met Trevor. Sunday distance. Anonymity. And a single friend from college, Alyssa, who once told me, "If you ever need to disappear, my couch has your name on it." I texted her at 4:15. She replied in 6 minutes flat, "Tell me when. I'll pick you up." I left everything. Clothes. Jewelry. The framed wedding photo from the hotel nightstand. All I took was my wallet, phone, and the flash drive. And I walked away from the version of me who stayed too long. Phoenix was louder than I remembered. The air buzzed with heat even in December, and the sky stretched wider than it had any right to. I hadn't been here in almost 9 years, since before Trevor, before the job, before the polite version of myself I'd wrapped around a marriage like armor. Alyssa met me at the gate in ripped jeans and a coffee-stained hoodie, looking exactly like she did when we shared a dorm, chaotic, warm, and fiercely unbothered by anything that wasn't true friendship. "You look like you just left a crime scene," she said, popping the trunk before I even made it to the curb. Technically, I think I did. She didn't ask questions. Just tossed my bag in the trunk, passed me a latte, and cranked the volume on some indie band I didn't recognize. The ride to her place felt like time travel back to a life where I had choices. Back to a Leah who could breathe. Her apartment was tiny. Half art studio, half jungle, thanks to her obsession with hanging plants. I slept on the pull-out couch with ivy brushing my cheek and a cracked window letting in the sounds of a city that didn't know me yet. I felt invisible. And for the first time in months, that felt like safety. It took Trevor exactly 48 hours to react. Alyssa and I were sipping coffee on her balcony when my phone lit up, unfamiliar number, but the area code was ours. I didn't answer. Then came the text. "You want a war? You've got it." Beneath it was a screenshot. Of me. From our wedding. Laughing. Whirling in a dress that didn't fit right because I'd been too polite to ask for another size. The caption below? "Wife disappears. Drains accounts. Any info appreciated." Posted to his social media. Set to public. By noon, it had 12,000 shares. "Holy hell," Alyssa muttered, reading over my shoulder. "He's making it look like I ran off with the money. Because he knows you ran." "Yeah," I said. "But he left out the part where he stole it first." She looked at me, serious now. "You ready to fight back?" "I don't have a choice." Mara had warned me this could happen. She'd started assembling a timeline, financial transactions, login logs, metadata from emails. She'd even found a security camera timestamp from our bank showing Trevor alone during a transfer he claimed we made together. "You don't need to just prove he manipulated funds," she said. "You need to prove intent." Intent. The word sat heavy, because Trevor didn't just want revenge, he wanted reputation. To keep his nice suits and dinner party invites and the image of a man whose wife just snapped. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about control. Then came the kicker. Max texted. "They came to my shop. With a lawyer." "Who?" I typed. "Trevor. And your old neighbor, Mallory. She told them I threatened you. Said I stalked you. That I forced you into emotional manipulation. They're trying to paint me as unstable. Said you fled to escape me." I stared at the screen in disbelief. They were rewriting the entire narrative. Trevor wasn't just trying to erase what he'd done. He was trying to frame someone else. I called Mara. "This is character assassination," she said. "He's smart. He's laying groundwork for when you go public. Can we stop it?" "Yes, but we have to go first. Take control of the story before he finishes building his." "How?" She smiled grimly. "We burn the whole thing down. Alyssa helped me film the video. It wasn't polished, just me, sitting on her balcony, no makeup, hair in a bun." I spoke directly to the camera. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I told the truth. How Trevor had quietly siphoned money. How he'd staged photos. How he'd sent threats. How my emotional affair, because that's what it was, never crossed the line into what he wanted people to believe. I owned what I'd done. Then I showed the documents. The texts. The photos of Max being followed. I ended it with one line. "If I disappear next, you know who to ask first." Alyssa uploaded it. We sent it to 3 trusted bloggers. Within 24 hours, it went viral. Trevor's silence was louder than anything. No legal statement. No rebuttal. Just nothing, which told me he was scrambling. But then Mallory struck. She posted her own video. Crying. Holding up a photo of us from a block party like it meant something. She said she watched her friend spiral, said I had always been erratic. That Max had been inappropriate and she'd tried to help. It was slick. Scripted. But the comments didn't buy it. Too many people had seen my side first. Too many receipts. And Trevor? He'd underestimated how much people hate a liar who gets caught. The final nail came from someone unexpected. Trevor's old assistant messaged me on a burner account. Said she'd seen him forge a document. Said he'd bragged about locking down his assets before I left. She had emails. She wanted out. Mara moved fast. Within 48 hours, we filed a cease and desist. Then a formal lawsuit for financial fraud and coercive control. Trevor tried to countersue. He lost, because the thing about men like Trevor? They think they're the smartest guy in the room until the room turns on them. But the damage wasn't just legal. It was personal. My parents, who had always loved Trevor more than me, called to ask why I didn't warn them first. My sister blocked me for airing family drama. Half my old coworkers sent polite texts that really meant, "Please don't tag me in anything." But for the first time in years, I didn't care. Because the truth was out. And I was still standing. The lawsuit didn't fix anything overnight. People assume once you go public, once the truth is out, things get better. But what they don't tell you is that the fallout keeps rippling long after the initial explosion. Sure, the comments on my video were overwhelmingly supportive, strangers thanking me for being brave, women sharing their own stories. But support on a screen doesn't clean out your bank account or silence the whispers at your old job or make your mom stop calling just to say, "We miss Trevor, you know." I was rebuilding, yes. But it felt like laying bricks underwater. Alyssa offered to let me stay as long as I wanted, but I couldn't live off her couch forever. I took a part-time job at a bookstore. Quiet. Simple. No parents' conferences or faculty meetings or passive-aggressive potlucks. Just me, books, and the occasional customer looking for something sad and meaningful. I liked the anonymity. I needed it. Max was distant. Not cruel, just quiet. Hesitant. Like every word might be the wrong one. I invited him over one night. We sat on Alyssa's balcony drinking cheap wine and watching the streetlights flicker. I never asked, I said. Why were you really at my door that morning? He looked down at his glass. Because I thought we could still fix it. And now? I think you were looking for something I could never be, he said. Not a partner. Not really. A parachute. That one hit hard. Because he wasn't wrong. I had clung to him like a lifeline when I was drowning in silence. I hadn't meant to, but that didn't mean it didn't happen. I'm sorry, I said. He nodded. I know. We didn't kiss. We didn't say goodbye. He just left, and I let him. Meanwhile, Trevor was unraveling. Quietly, but completely. His real estate firm put him on extended leave after the financials from the lawsuit were leaked. He sold the house, our house, without ever notifying me, in a desperate grab for liquid cash. Mara filed an injunction. It didn't matter. He was already bleeding money, clients, friends. One of the last emails I got from him came at 3:14 a.m. Subject: You win. No body text. No signature. Just those 2 words, typed like a curse. I didn't reply, but I sat awake all night, wondering what winning even meant anymore. One morning, I walked past the mirror in Alyssa's hallway and caught a glimpse of myself, hair undone, bookstore apron still on, a smudge of ink on my cheek from shelving returns. And for a second, I didn't recognize me. Not because I looked bad, but because I looked free. Not manicured. Not curated. Not posed for someone else's approval. Just present. It was a strange kind of peace. The kind that doesn't come from being happy, but from finally being honest. That week, I rented a tiny studio apartment 3 blocks from the bookstore. Exposed brick, crooked floors, windows that rattled when it rained. It was perfect. I bought a used futon, a coffee maker, and a plant I immediately forgot to water. I didn't tell anyone where I'd moved. Not Mara. Not even Alyssa, at first. It wasn't about hiding anymore. It was about choosing what to keep sacred. For the first time in years, I made a space just for me. And it felt like breathing air that hadn't already been spoken over. Trevor's final move came 2 weeks later. A press statement. He admitted mismanagement of shared finances and emotional mistakes. He didn't deny the manipulation, but he framed it as a breakdown under personal pressure. He never used my name, never said the word sorry, and that was fine, because I didn't need it anymore. At the bookstore, I met a woman named Cora. Mid-50s, quick wit, always bought crime novels and herbal tea. She asked me one day, "What did you do before this?" I paused, then said, "I used to help people who forgot how to ask for help." She nodded slowly, like she understood. Then she smiled and said, "Looks like you're finally helping yourself." That stuck with me, because maybe I was. The envelope came on a Monday. No return address. No stamps. Just my name, written in looping cursive that felt oddly familiar, and a wax seal I hadn't seen in years. Trevor's seal. He used it once on our wedding invitations. Said it made things feel important. The irony didn't hit until now, holding the heavy cream envelope in my trembling hands, alone in my studio apartment with a half-drunk mug of tea and 3 loads of unfolded laundry staring at me like a Greek chorus. I almost threw it away. Almost. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. And grief, even when it's buried, has a nasty habit of clawing its way to the surface when you least want it. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Handwritten. No date. No greeting. Just a confession. "Leah, you said once that I don't feel things. That I just calculate. That I move pieces and people the same way I move numbers. You weren't wrong. But you also weren't entirely right. There were moments, small ones, where I felt things I didn't know how to say. When you laughed at your own jokes, or danced barefoot on the kitchen tile when you thought I wasn't watching. I saw those things. I just never knew what to do with them. I've spent my whole life afraid of being small, of being forgotten. You weren't a threat to that. You were the mirror. You showed me who I was when no one else was looking. And I hated it. Not because it was you. Because it was true. I won't fight the case. Mara will confirm that by now. I won't drag you into another round. You won. Or maybe we both lost. Either way, I'm done playing games. There's one thing left in the safe. The code is the same. Take it or don't. But know this, I never hated you. Even when I should have. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it, placed it back in the envelope, and sat in silence. It wasn't an apology. Not really. But it was something. A crack in the mask. Maybe even the first honest thing he'd given me in years. The next morning, I drove back to the house. It was empty now, just a shell, listed online as charming fixer-upper in a sought-after community. I still had a key. The lock hadn't changed. The air smelled like dust and lemon cleaner. The furniture was gone. But the safe in the closet? Still bolted to the floor. I knelt, typed in the code, our anniversary, backwards. It clicked open with a groan. Inside was a manila folder. And a flash drive. The folder held a single document, a will. Threadverse. Revised a week prior. It named me as the sole beneficiary. No conditions. No catches. Just a clean handover of whatever remained after debts. And on the flash drive? Video files. 4, to be exact. Each one dated. Each one a silent recording of his meetings, financial transactions, conversations with Mallory, even one where he muttered to himself late at night, pacing with a glass in hand, talking about losing the war. He'd recorded his own undoing. And now he'd given it to me. I drove back to Phoenix with the folder tucked under the passenger seat. Didn't play music. Didn't answer texts. Just thought. Because now I had a decision. Trevor had tried to destroy me. But in the end, he'd handed me the evidence to bury him completely. Publicly. Permanently. And part of me wanted to scorch every bridge he had left and watch him squirm in the court of public opinion. But another part, the quieter one, the version of me who used to believe in second chances, wondered if letting go might be the real victory. Would I rather win or finally move on? That night, I lit a candle, opened my laptop, and clicked on the first video. Trevor was pacing, muttering about reputation, about being outplayed, about how she didn't just leave, she dismantled me. It didn't feel triumphant to watch. It felt like autopsy footage. He was hollow. Broken. I closed the laptop. And chose silence. Not forgiveness. Not pity. Just peace. Because sometimes, the most powerful choice you can make isn't revenge. It's release. I didn't post the videos. Didn't leak the will. Didn't alert the media. Didn't send screenshots to bloggers or ex-friends waiting to sip on the next round of gossip. Instead, I stored the drive in a safety deposit box at a bank downtown and walked out into the Phoenix sunlight with a strange, weightless feeling in my chest. I hadn't forgiven Trevor, but I'd taken back something he never thought I'd find again, my voice. And the silence that followed? It wasn't hollow. It was mine. Life didn't explode into something dramatic after that. No spontaneous love affairs, no job offers from TED Talks, no viral redemptions. Just small things. The bookstore added me to the schedule full-time. I curated a rebuild shelf, memoirs, poetry, fiction about second lives. People started asking for me by name. Cora, the regular, brought me a plant and said, "You remind me of someone who survived a fire." I smiled. I think I did. Alyssa and I became more like sisters than friends. She never asked me to move out, but one night we both came home with new keys, mine to my studio apartment, hers to a gallery she'd just signed a lease for. We celebrated with gas station wine and grilled cheese sandwiches. I've never laughed harder. One morning, I opened the shop early and found a small envelope tucked in the doorframe. No name, no message, just a single photograph inside. Of me, laughing, Max must have taken it, sometime back at the garage, before things unraveled. Before the note, before the glass, before the war. On the back, in faint pencil, it said, "You looked like yourself again." I stood there in the quiet morning light, staring at it until the sun crept over the bookstore awning and warmed my face. I didn't cry. I just slipped the photo into the pocket of my apron and unlocked the door. Trevor's story faded faster than I thought it would. After the lawsuit was quietly settled, he sold off the last of his properties and moved. Where? I don't know. Mara said he signed a non-disclosure agreement and then disappeared. Maybe he's somewhere starting over. Maybe he's still chasing an audience. I don't care, because I'm not watching anymore. That night, I walked to the overlook behind my apartment. It's a quiet spot, an abandoned stretch of pavement that juts out over the city lights. You can see the skyline shimmer, the mountains crouch behind it like tired giants. I sat on the hood of my car, wrapped in a thrifted blanket, and watched the world keep spinning. And I realized something I hadn't dared believe since this all began. I wasn't broken. I was becoming the kind of person who doesn't need to be rescued. The kind who doesn't need to prove herself. The kind who chooses stillness, not because there's nothing left to say, but because she finally said enough. 6 months later, I planted a lemon tree. Nothing fancy, just a small one, in a cracked clay pot on the fire escape outside my window. It was scrawny, the leaves too pale, but I liked how stubborn it looked. Like it didn't care what space it was in, it was going to grow anyway. Alyssa laughed when she saw it. "You kill every plant you touch," she said. "Maybe," I replied. "But not this one." I named it August, after the month I left. Every morning, I'd water it with a chipped mug and talk to it like it could hear me. Some days, I told it stories from the bookstore. Other days, I said nothing at all. But it was always there. And somehow, so was I. I never told anyone where I hid the flash drive. Not because I feared Trevor anymore, but because I knew what it represented. Proof of a life I no longer lived, of a woman I'd finally outgrown. Truth is, I never needed to use it. Trevor vanished from my life the same way he entered, quietly, strategically, with just enough charm to make you question whether the danger was real. And yet, the evidence sat in that safety deposit box like a loaded pistol in a drawer. A reminder. Not of him. Of me. Of how close I came to losing myself entirely. I reconnected with my parents. Slowly, awkwardly. They still didn't understand it all. They missed the old Trevor and blamed themselves for not seeing the cracks. But they came around. My mom sent me an old recipe box. My dad mailed me a photo of me at 10, hugging our golden retriever, grinning like I had secrets no one knew. I framed it and put it on my nightstand. Because I think that version of me, scraped knee, sunburned, stubborn, would be proud of the woman who finally stood up and walked out. Cora, my favorite customer, died in her sleep in late spring. She left me a note, folded into the pages of a mystery novel. "You reminded me that even messy stories can be beautiful." I cried for 2 days. Then I renamed the rebuild shelf at the bookstore. It's now called Cora's Corner. And every time someone asks what it means, I smile and say, it's for stories that don't end where you expect them to. One afternoon in July, I saw Max. It was at the farmer's market. I was picking peaches. He was walking a dog I didn't recognize. We made eye contact. He smiled. I smiled back. He didn't walk over. I didn't call out. But that smile? It said everything. That we were okay. That what we had mattered even if it wasn't meant to last. And that maybe, sometimes, letting go isn't loss. It's grace. August bloomed. Not the month, the tree. One small, perfect lemon appeared on a branch that had almost snapped under its own weight. I stood on the fire escape and stared at it like it was a miracle. And maybe it was. Not because it changed anything, but because it reminded me that broken things still grow, that cracked pots still hold life, and that even a woman who once lost everything she thought she needed could wake up one morning and finally, quietly, breathe. The lemon was sour, but it was mine. And that was enough.